أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ربنا إننا سمعنا مناديا ينادي للإيمان أن آمنوا بربكم فآمنا ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار ربنا وآتنا ما وعدتنا على رسلك ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Alright, again, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Here's what we're going to try to do today. I can't promise I'm going to do it right, but we're going to try to do it. So we have obviously this passage 190 to 195. We kind of titled it A Journey to Faith. If you haven't been here, if you've been here, just as a quick reminder, this is a passage about a person, an unnamed person. There's someone speaking to Allah, and the passage is basically their journey to Allah and how they kind of came to that conclusion. We'll go back to the beginning. Allah calls out that around us, the physical reality of the world, the skies and the earth, the alteration of the night and the day, are all what Allah calls ayat or signs for people called ulil albab or people of sound minds. Who can remind me what are ulil albab? What does that mean to have a sound mind? We should know this term by now, easily. Not you. Go ahead. Rational thinkers, okay, that's part of it. One part is that they think about the reality around them. What's another part?
You're God conscious in everything around you. Like
Yeah.
remind you of Allah.
Very, very good.
That remind you of Allah, everything.
Very, very good. Yeah. So Allah, the way Allah puts it is يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ, that they remember Allah standing, sitting, and on their sides. Meaning they remember Him often. They remember Him all the time. Whatever they're doing, they're at work. They pause for a second. They remember Allah. Right. So these two things together, people of sound minds. One other element of this, I'll remind you, are people. I mean, remember I gave you the junk food example. That someone whose body is just fueled by junk their body doesn't work as well as a body that's healthy. The same way for the mind. If a mind is consuming nothing but junk food, nothing but music and video games and TV and movies and even useless information, you can, by the way, fill your mind with this what I'll call Islamic junk food, like where you're obsessed with tajweed, but you totally ignore what you're reciting. Actually, Allah complains about this. People that what scholars say, He complains about people like the people of Bani Israel, that their entire book that they were given, the Tawrat, was just reduced to recitation. That's all it was to them now. It wasn't to get lessons from, it wasn't to get the law from, it was just recitation. At that point, you made it junk food for yourself. It in and of itself is not junk food, but that's what you did with it. It's like being obsessed with the paper. It's so nice. It feels, oh my God, there's some green. But you have no idea what it says. You understand? So people that are unfocused or don't have their priorities straight. So people that limit their intake on this junk, on what we'll say entertainment, and people that remember Allah often and think about His creation, they're signs for these people. And then we talked about how that passage switches and now this person's talking to Allah directly. And he says, رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. There's no way you created this without purpose. Subhanak, you're way beyond that. فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. So protect us from the punishment of the fire. That's where we left off, yes? That's where we left off last time. And then we had the talk with Asad, which I hope you guys found really beneficial. Asad went through like a process, remember? Kind of like you start with sincerity, you question first, like, you kind of provide evidence of the existence of God, then of the existence of a purpose. Then how does God convey that purpose, and then what could that revelation be? And that's where people kind of get left off sometimes, right? What could that revelation be? This person's going through that same process. So they're thinking about the skies and the earth. Remember, keep in mind, right now we're going through examples if it's just like a non-Muslim that, a nameless person, a non-Muslim that's going through their life, thinking about the skies and the earth, and coming to these conclusions on their own. And we left off at the conclusion, فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Like, you can imagine this person saying, like, God, whoever you are, creator, whatever your name is, there's no way you made this without purpose. You're way too perfect. You're way subhanak. You're way beyond that. Protect me from the fire. And then one question came like, there's no mention, there's no obvious, from the skies and the earth, there's no obvious, there's a fire coming or hell is coming. outside of religious text. This person realizes that if the entire reality around them has purpose, remember I gave you the example of the wind last time? Like you think of the wind as just like a breeze, but the wind is really this like system of transportation, like this advanced subway system in the sky that takes life places. Remember we talked about that? He's looking at the wind and looking at like thinking about his own eyelashes. If you study the human body, even down to the cell, you'll notice that one cell is shaped a certain way just so your skin doesn't implode or something crazy like that, really. Every time you think about natural phenomena, you think about this is like there's purpose behind this and behind the shape of the cell and my eyelashes and the wind and the bee and so on and so forth. If everything around you has purpose and you realize a creator made it with purpose, what else has a purpose then? I do. It's not just like, wow, that's really cool that the wind does that. That's amazing that my eyelashes keep me from going blind at birth. That's really cool that a baby has hearing before sight and here's the reason why in the womb of the mother and blah, blah, blah. You can't just stop there. If everything has purpose, I have purpose. And actually, my wife reminded me of this on the drive home after the first lecture. It was a really amazing thought, actually. When you think about, when you study ecosystems, and you study like the food chain and even the wind, how it works and how trees work and how all these things come together. By the way, if you take like a natural untouched ecosystem, meaning like all the bugs, the animals, the trees, a river stream, maybe the size of this room, in American dollars, it's trillions. It's worth trillions. That's how valuable even if we try to put a dollar, which is a foolish thing, like a very capitalistic thing to do, but if you try to put a dollar value on that little bit of land that just naturally runs itself, they value it at billions or trillions. That's how valuable we see that stuff, right? But when you think about all the ecosystems we live in, when you think about the food chain, that the lion eats the gazelle, that eats the grass, that the bugs feed off of, and then when the lions die, that whole circle of life, Hakuna Matata stuff, yeah? Where do we fit in that? You tell me, where do human beings fit on those ecosystems and fit in that circle of life and fit in the food chain? Are we a necessary part of it or an unnecessary part of it? Totally unnecessary. There is literally nothing dependent on us. In fact, we mess everything up. As soon as we arrive, Hakuna Matata becomes A'udhu Billah. Like there's like different song happens. Track 2, other side of the track, right? For 90s kids. Different vibe. When humans are involved, actually we sap things. We don't contribute things. So this person is thinking like, I'm not needed in this. I must have a different purpose altogether. So he ends up saying, فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. So protect us from the punishment of the fire. My purpose must be something else. I don't know what it is. This person has no idea what it is yet. But in his mind, I just don't want to lose. فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Okay? Let me go to here. رَبَّنَا إِنَّكَ مَنْ تُدْخِلِ النَّارِ فَقَدْ أَخْزَيْتَهُ. We mentioned this last time as well. Our master, whoever you did cause to enter the fire, then you have humiliated them. وَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ مِنْ أَنصَارٍ. And the wrongdoers have no helpers whatsoever. This person is now identifying the opposite of dignity. They see that human beings have dignity. One example of human beings having dignity is we are the only species on earth that wear clothes. Actually, the way Quran talks about clothes is so amazing. I don't know if you know this. When, like the story of Adam and Eve alayhim salam, and they ate from the tree, and then the clothes of Jannah were stripped from them. You know this? You might have even seen it on a cartoon where this happens, even like they draw stuff for Allah, but like on Tom and Jerry or something, whatever, like old cartoons. But we believe in that part of the story. Sometimes we get it mixed with the Christian record, but we believe in that part of the story that because they lost their rights to Jannah, they lost their rights to the clothes of Jannah. You understand where I'm going? And then they started taking leaves and covering themselves, which is interesting that like the first human beings knew that they should be clothed, that this is an undignified way to be. Like they even just leaves they tried to take. Anyway, when they got brought down to earth, you know what Allah said about their clothes? He said that He sent it down. Which people that read Quran often, when Allah says anzalna, what does that make you think of? Revelation. It's as if Allah is kind of treating clothes as a type of revelation. This is like a divine intervention of Allah that this human beings, this species will be a clothed species. They will make their own clothes. SubhanAllah. And this person looks around and knows that human beings are a dignified creature. And this, by the way, is a really important lesson from Quran. We believe that human beings have dignity. We believe that human beings have a right, by the way. Like, for example, obviously zina is one of the major sins. I listened to a lecture on why zina is a major sin from Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. You know what the number one reason is that scholars determine why zina is haram? Is actually because it messes with your lineage. Like, how could you keep track of who your father is, who your mother is, who your grandfather is, and who kind of like your asbab all the way back if zina is part of the society? You can't. We have a crazy epidemic in America where people literally don't know who their fathers are. And that messes with the people. Think about, for example, black Americans that were kidnapped and put on the ships and brought here. They have till today, some black Americans, not the ones from actually like Africa that flew in on a plane recently, but black Africans that were forced to come here as slaves have no idea most of the time where they come from. Can you imagine? Like when they take, what is that test called? When they prick their finger and they send it to a stranger? What is it?
DNA.
Yeah, the DNA test. Yeah, I forgot probably should do it anyway. Probably sell your info. But those DNA tests, when they submit their blood, what comes as a result for like almost every black American? It goes to a white man because his great grandfather basically, had relationship with a slave, and then that's where the lineage comes from. Before that, they have no idea because they just got ransacked. And that sets them at a disadvantage because they don't know where they're from. You understand? You indignified an entire people by doing this to them. Do you understand where I'm coming from? This person realizes, no, we have dignity. And Allah through Quran gives us dignity. And I want to call out, for example, hijab as a number one example, actually. Hijab is one of the most dignified practices that we have. That Allah dignifies women by putting this law upon them. That a Muslim woman will always be a dignified person. I'll give you a story as an example of this. I used to work at Dunkin' Donuts. Me and like every friend. It was like a sunnah to work at Dunkin' when I was in college. So me and literally everyone else, like us who worked there too, Hanan, everyone worked at Dunkin' Donuts. But anyway, there was this dude I worked with that was mashallah a pig. He was as bad as the bacon that he was cooking. And every time someone that he thought was attractive would walk in the store, he would, like elbow me and like start, like they look like animals, like they drool, whatever, like they would make comments, whatever. Then we had a Muslim coworker that walked in soon after one of the girls he kind of howled at walked in, and he turned red and looked down. See what I mean? Dignified. Human beings recognize when people are dignified. Do you understand? That's what I'm trying to get at here, subhanAllah. So, but where does indignity come from? Who defines what it means to be indignified, to be humiliated? Allah. And this person realizes the people who are truly humiliated are the people that you threw in the fire. فَقَدْ أَخْزَيْتَهُ Then you have humiliated them. وَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ مِنْ أَنصَارٍ And the wrongdoers have no helpers whatsoever. Now, the subject changes a little bit, and he starts with a different monologue. You can imagine time sort of passes, and look what he says next. رَبَّنَا إِنَّنَا سَمِعْنَا مُنَادِيًا يُنَادِي لِلْإِيمَانِ Our Master, we have heard the call of a caller, calling to faith, يُنَادِي لِلْإِيمَانِ and aminu bi rabbikum, that you should all believe in your Master. فَآمَنَّا So we believed. And by the way, فَآمَنَّا versus ثُمَّ آمَنَّا, we immediately believed. I heard someone talk. By the way, munadiyan is really important here. Not رَبَّنَا إِنَّنَا سَمِعْنَا الْمُنَادِي يُنَادِي. We heard the caller. If you hear the caller, who is the caller to Islam? The Prophet ﷺ. This is munadiyan, a caller. Just someone, I don't even know who he is. I heard someone call. Let me give you an example of what this looks like in modern day. This person's thinking about the skies and the earth, thinking about their purpose, thinking about the afterlife, thinking about talking to God. I don't know who you are, but I need your help, I need your guidance, so on and so forth. And all of a sudden they're at Marine Valley and someone has a "What is Islam" booth. No, really. And they go up to them and they're just hearing like the elevator pitch. We believe in one God, we believe the Prophet came, Jesus was a messenger before him. We're the only religion in the world that actually believes in actual tawheed, that we don't ascribe any partners. And he walks away and he's like, this is exactly what I was looking for. Converts in the room, I don't know if we have any in the room right now, but they have this is what I was looking for moment a lot of the time. Sometimes not. But a lot of the time, these people, ulil albab, they reach someone talking about Islam, whether it's a video on YouTube, whether it's someone at their college doing some sort of booth, whether they visited a masjid for a day or something like that. They have this, what Allah calls nurun ala nur moment. You ever hear nurun ala nur, light upon light? It's like the light of the inside had this chemical, spiritual reaction with the light from the outside. And they're like, this is it. This is exactly it. You heard also tell a story last time of someone that was so eager because this is what they were looking for that they didn't even learn about the Prophet yet. And he's like, slow down, you should know about him first before you say a shahada with his name in it. You understand? But some people really, they're like this. This is it. Like this is it moment. You understand? And that's what this looks like for them. That same night they go home and they're like, my master, or our master, we have heard the call of a caller calling to faith, and we believed. We believed. رَبَّنَا فَاغْفِرْ لَنَا ذُنُوبَنَا. So our master, forgive us for our sins. وَكَفِّرْ عَنَّا سَيِّئَاتِنَا. And bury away our evil deeds. We'll talk about the difference between dhunub and sayyi in a second. وَتَوَفَّنَا مَعَ الْأَبْرَارِ. And take us among the good people. Take us among the good people. So far, they're having these thoughts on their own. And then eventually, they meet someone who their speech matches what they've been thinking. And they accept the faith. And that night, they're making dua to Allah, that, Ya Allah, number one, forgive us for our sins. And second of all, وَكَفِّرْ عَنَّا سَيِّئَاتِنَا. Now, what's the difference between the two? A dhanb, just generally, a dhanb is smaller than a sayyi'ah. Forgive us for, a dhanb literally means actually the tail of an animal. It's like the most embarrassing part of the animal. Ghafara also, when we do istighfar, ghafara means to cover. Like, I can cover these pretzels, sort of. I did ghafar. Okay, istighfar is to ask for that. It's like hide away the embarrassing things that I've done. But كَفِّرْ عَنَّا سَيِّئَاتِنَا is more intense. Ghafara is to bury. Obviously, the difference between to cover something and to bury something is huge. If you cover something, you still kind of know, I don't know what it is. It could be a phone, a bag of pretzels, who knows. But something's covered there. But to bury something away, you have no idea what was there anymore. And by the way, a sayyi'ah, why is that one getting more extreme language? Sayyi'ah, you could say, comes from saw, which is a corpse, a dead body. So it's like these things that I'm so extremely ashamed of. You can say the difference between minor sins and major sins. A saw is like, imagine you have a dead body in front of you. Like, the number one thing is, look at this terrible thing, like dread crosses down your face. Look at this terrible thing that I've done. And the second thought is, how do I get rid of this thing? Really, actually. So just, Ya Allah, just take them completely away from me. كَفِّرْ عَنَّا سَيِّئَاتِنَا. Take away our most embarrassing, most evil deeds. وَتَوَفَّنَا مَعَ الْأَبْرَارِ. And here's the most beautiful part, actually. And when we die, count us among the abrar. We had a whole lecture one time of Bir. Remember, who was there for that one? That was a small one. You were there, yeah. Bir. The people of Bir. The people who, like, how Allah defines good people. I'm not going to go into that now. I'll send you a reminder if you want to read it for yourself. It's like a list of what Allah determines is people of Bir, or here abrar is the plural. Okay? But regardless, this person is now saying, Ya Allah, when I go, I just want to be counted among people you think are good. So this person's immediately thinking about their death, actually. They're no longer obsessed with this world anymore. They've let that completely go. They realize there's a bigger game happening. And when I say game, I actually mean specifically that word. I've never thought of the ayah this way, but Ustaz Naman brought it up, where there's an ayah that kind of like summarizes life, and it starts by saying, إِنَّمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا لَعِبٌ. Life is nothing but a game. Actually in Hadid, you might be studying Hadid, right? You'll get to that part. That Allah literally calls life a game. It's like you have all these distractions. If you ever played a video game before, you have all these enemies coming at you. You have a mission that you have to do. And the point of the game is to avoid obstacles and get to like Super Mario. Everyone played Mario before. You avoid the Goombas, you get to the flag. Just make me someone successful. I want to win at this game. I don't care about being here anymore. I just want to win at this game. And we'll talk about that a lot more, especially towards the end, inshallah. A couple of things here, though. This might be counterintuitive, but listen to this. I'll try to explain it the best that I can. Is Islam a religion of thought? Are we supposed to be thinking or not? Yes. We learned from this one. Obviously, we're supposed to be thinking. But I want to caveat this. We are people where Allah expects, not just us, by the way, humanity. Allah expects humanity to think. And that thinking is supposed to lead you to certain conclusions. These conclusions we're learning here, actually, that there is a God, there is a purpose, there must be some message, and when we come in contact to that message through a messenger, we're supposed to accept it. Now, once you accept the message, like let's say literally you're a convert, like you're a non-Muslim, and then you have these thoughts, it gets validated and you accept Islam. After that, actually, you don't think anymore in a certain extent, you stop your thinking. We are not a blind faith. If you go to a church, for example, you start asking questions that are a little bit too deep, like how can God be three in one? How can the Father be God, and the Son be God, and the Holy Spirit be God, and they're all separately God and all together God, all at the same time? They will tell you what? You just have to what? Believe. You just have to have faith, turn off your mind, and turn on your heart is the general response you get. We don't believe in that. We're a faith that Allah told us to balance the two. We're the only faith, I would argue. The Jews, for example, they tip the scales the other way. I told you about this last week as well. They have a culture of debating each other. I knew, this was kind of a crazy story, Wallah. There's a guy, Owen Benjamin. He's a comedian. I don't recommend listening to him, but he's a comedian. And his father's Jewish, and he used to play this game. Because, again, the Jews have this culture of debate. That's just like in Tel Aviv, for example, if you go study Judaism, you're studying how to debate other people and how to kill other people in debate, basically. Is how you study Judaism. Anyway, and this is how they make rulings, by the way, is debating each other. So it's a lot of the mind and none of the heart, you can argue, okay? So this dude, his father was Jewish, mother was not, and they played a game. This is a very, I would argue, twisted game. But the game was you pull a card, and on this card is a false statement that you have to argue is true. So you'll pull a card, and the card says, the sky is red. And the point of the game is to convince the entire room, logically, that the sky is red. It's an exercise that a lot of that Jews use to kind of study, how do I debate properly? How do I defeat my opponent? We do not have this approach because that's like you start with the false premise and try to prove it. You understand? That's not how we think. We think Allah defines truth and we go from there. Yeah? But theirs is a lot of back and forth intellectually about debating, and that's kind of where they get their faith from. They are very much tipped the other way. Here, I'll give you another example. In the Talmud, for example, this is a really twisted example. This is in the Talmud. I recommend looking in the Talmud, but this is in the Talmud. In the Talmud, there is a little excerpt that if you were to tie a man, like Jaman, if I tied you to a pole outside, and I don't feed you and I don't give you water, and I leave you alone for 2 weeks, what happens to you? You die. But in the Talmud, I didn't murder you. Your body killed itself. Because I didn't do I just tied the rope. I didn't do anything to your body. It becomes what happens when you have an imbalance. When you have an imbalance of the heart over the mind, you come up with just believe, and it's like, this doesn't make any sense. How can I just believe? When you have a tip the other way where it's just think and the heart will worry about that later, you come up with wild stuff. You leave a human being to let their mind be their God, and they come up with wild stuff that they religiously validate. Obviously, you killed him. A Muslim would be like, what are you talking about? What a shaitanic way of thinking about this stuff. Well, really, it is ridiculous. But that's when you let the mind go wild without the heart as a guide, you come up with really disgusting things, actually. We're a religion that balances both. However, I will call this out. We do not question the laws of Allah. There's a balance even with this, actually. We think and we contemplate and we obviously remember Allah often, and we ask the big questions. Who is Allah? Who isn't Allah? What is the final revelation? How do we enact it in our lives? Right? How do we invite the big questions? Who is God? And what is the final? All these different kind of things. What does He expect from me? What is the purpose in life? These are the big questions. But when you enter the faith, you don't start asking questions such as, well, why can't I drink alcohol? Why is it 5 times a day? Maghrib, I feel really special today. I want to do 4. I don't want to do just 3. Ramadan's really tough. I mean, why do we even have to do that? I'll just do a week, maybe a weekend. And I'm going to drink water because my doctor told me to. And it just makes sense to me. No. No. There is a certain part in our faith, the brain that's no longer your guide. And I want to be very careful with this. Some things in our faith are very black and white, yes or no? Zina, very black and white, yes? There is no arguing against zina or around zina. Alcohol, very black and white, yes? Salah, very, very, very black and white. There are certain laws that we adhere to that are impossible to argue. People try and they look, mashallah, genius when they do it. Very, very stupid when they do it, to be honest. But there are certain things you cannot argue about. That's where let me tell you it this way, actually, to be more clear. When it comes to, for example, conversations about why can't we drink, why can't we do zina, why can't we, involve ourselves in riba, for example, in interest, why can't we kill, why can't whatever, all these different things, why do we have to go to the Kaaba, why can't we go somewhere nice like Hawaii, these kind of things. The first, or why do we wear hijab? Actually, let me poke at that one. Why do we wear hijab? What is the number one reason why we wear hijab, or why women wear hijab in the faith? Allah said so. Period. Why don't we drink alcohol? Who can tell me? Allah said so. Why can't we do, why is business halal and riba haram? What's the number one reason? Because Allah said in the Quran that we made business halal and riba haram. That's number one reason. That's not to say you cannot go deeper in and think of benefits, 100%. And I would argue you must do that. You have to do that. I had a beautiful conversation between my wife and my best friend the other day over dinner. We talked about hijab, and mashallah, there's so many benefits that we kind of brainstormed together about the hijab that were beautiful. Maybe one day we'll bring them in and we'll do that together, inshallah. You're supposed to think about not just the law itself, but the spirit behind it. What's the purpose of hijab and why not drink? That's good. But when you think logically, what's the number one reason we don't do these things? It's because my master said no, actually. So, and going back to Asr's point, if a non-Muslim, if someone interested in Islam comes up to you and starts, remember I gave you the analogy last week of a lot of the time, we have this task of cutting down a tree. Imagine you have a task, you have to cut down the tree. The majority of the people in the world, they grab an axe and they start hitting at leaves, at the branches. You understand where I'm going with this? When you ask the question, what is the right faith? You don't start asking why women wear hijab and why we are not allowed to eat pork. You go to the trunk of it, dude. Go to the trunk of it. Who is God? How do you know? Who's the messenger? How do we know he's telling the truth? How do we know? How do we know the Quran is actually the word of Allah? Hit the trunk if you want to cut down the tree. Don't start chopping at zina and hijab and bro, that comes later. Relax for a second. Go to the tree. You're not being honest with yourself if that's the questions that you're asking. You know what I mean? That's where you have to go. So when people come to you, or actually first and foremost for yourself. Remember, I ended with this last time. But the tragedy of Muslims today, and I will specifically call out our community of Palestinian Muslims, specifically, of Arab Muslims in general, specifically. We are mindless Muslims, man, really. Sometimes we're just mindless. We're like zombie Muslims. We know a lot about what we're supposed to do and not supposed to do. We know a lot about stuff like magic and sihr and whatever, ayn, when we go like this and someone's head explodes or something like that. Nothing about this coming to the conclusion of Allah, submitting yourself to Him, being able to explain it. Can you explain it to someone else? Why you believe in one God? Can you explain that to someone? Can you do an elevator pitch yourself? Really? Has that really internalized before we go to these other the laws and everything else? For the most of us, no. The way we raise our kids, even as Arab, we're very authoritarian people. Where very authority comes before your brain. Yes, that's kind of how we are, and unfortunately how we raise our kids. So when we raise our kids, hey Sam, how are you? Good to see you. Sorry, I just love that one. It's good to see you. Umar Mubarak, by the way, inshallah. Or Makbul. Okay, anyway, what was I saying? He distracted me. I like him so much. When we teach our kids about Islam, it's very, you're not supposed to do that. It's ayib. We're not supposed to do this. And if we ask questions why, it's because I said so. The way we're supposed to raise our kids is supposed to be balanced, but I would say for our community, we're supposed to focus on the spirit of everything. This is where we go back to. We believe that Allah is the authority. Here's why we believe He exists. Here's why we believe He's one. Here's why we believe the Quran is the last word of God, the last message. Here's why He's the last messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and everything else just naturally follows suit. It becomes, really think how ridiculous this is. If you know for a fact Islam is the truth, if you in fact really believe this, You don't care why, actually, when you think about it. Like a convert, for example, has less of an issue with this than we do. If a convert has come to this conclusion, they know the Quran is the last word of Allah. They know the Messenger ﷺ is the last messenger of Allah. They know that Allah exists and He's the only God and all this kind of stuff, yes? They've been looking for it their whole life and they finally come to it. They care very little for reason. They have the attitude of like, if He told me to jump on one foot every Tuesday, I'd do it. Because He's God. I don't need another explanation. We're very loyal to Allah. We're thinkers, but when it comes to Allah, we're loyal. Do you understand? So I would argue we're very balanced intellectually with this stuff. There's a certain part, we turn our brains off. I don't drink alcohol, I don't have to explain it to you. It's because Allah said so. Period. But when it comes to people telling you, arguing with you that Allah is, He has a son, stuff for Allah, that the skies and the earth want to fall apart just hearing this phrase, you be like, Hatu burhanakum, give me your proof. Where do you get this from? Where do you get this from? How do you come to that conclusion? What a dumb conclusion. How do you come to that conclusion? Then we become intellectuals. But when it comes to Allah's commandments, samana wa ata'na. You understand? I want to give you an example of this that I thought up because my wife and I are studying Baqarah right now together. And there's a big chunk of Baqarah talking about who? Who's the group of people that Baqarah, it's literally nicknamed, actually no, I think it's Surah, but what is a big chunk of Baqarah talks about who? Bani Israel. The Muslims following Musa alayhi salam. I swear to God, you read the story and you like sometimes turn the page like you missed something or like you misread something. Wallahi, you just go like had a V8 moment. What is wrong with you? When you read their stories, Allah like in the beginning of towards the beginning of Baqarah complains about all the ridiculous decisions that they made. That for example, they just crossed the sea. Imagine that God split the sea for you. The messenger like goes to a mountain and you see a lightning bolt or something, comes back down and gives you a revelation. You just crossed the sea. There's no absolute reason at all to disbelieve. There's literally no intellectual reason anymore. It literally happened in front of you, my guy. There's no other explanation anymore. And then you go and you worship a cow. You make a cow out of gold and mud and you're like, this is our God because Musa went to go talk to Allah, so we're gonna, while he's gone, we'll do this. And then when Musa comes, actually the verdict was that those people that worship the cow will be killed. And then Allah brought them back to life. So you're seeing the dead brought back to life. 2 separate occasions the dead got back to life in front of them. Actually 3 separate occasions, at least that we know of. One where it's one person got brought back to life and then died again. A second scenario where a group of people that worship the cow died and came back to life. A third scenario where all of them died and came back to life. And they still didn't do what Allah told them to do. What is wrong with you? Is that an intellectual problem with them? No. What is that a problem of? Everyone tell me, what's that a problem of?
Ego.
The heart. The ego, yes, but in the heart. So I came to the verdict of this. This is my thought process right now. I'm going to give you a scenario. I want you to imagine that we live in some alternate reality where Allah zaps in every human being intellectually. They know Allah's one. They just know. They don't have to go through a process. They don't have to look at the skies and the earth. They just know. They know that the Prophet ﷺ is the only prophet. They know that the Quran is the word of Allah. There's nothing up here. What's left? Now it's the matter of here. If we lived in a world where everyone agreed, like even the worst of us agreed, yeah, of course God is only one. Of course He is. What are you talking about? What do you mean? Of course, that's a stupid question. Everyone was on the same page from birth. Google Gaga, Allah's one. Okay? Everybody. Still you would have people disbelieve. This is a theme of Quran, by the way. I'm going to repeat myself. If everyone intellectually knew, it was zapped into them, they knew from birth, God is one, Quran is the last word of Allah, the Prophet ﷺ is the last messenger, you would still have disbelievers. Many of them, most of them, actually most people would. Because they're missing what end, what part of it? The heart. To the point where Bani Israel, after all of that, these are the same people going through the same story, by the way. And then they're told to slaughter a cow. What color? What size? Which one? I'm confused. And they keep asking questions. That is a problem of the heart. And they are a people with no intellectual deficiencies. Let me give you another extreme example. The devil himself, Shaitan himself, Iblis himself, intellectually knows Allah is one, talked to him directly, my guys. Talked to him directly, yes? Knows who the messengers are. He messes with them directly. Or tries to. Knows the revelation. And is he a believer? He's the first kafir. This is a theme of Quran, I'll repeat myself. That to get here intellectually is not the hard part. In fact, I talked about that like it was a scenario, as if everyone was on the same page. Actually, the scenario is kind of where we live. Because to come to any other conclusion other than one God makes zero sense. Whether you're an atheist or a Christian or a Hindu, you cannot properly explain to me anything other than La ilaha illallah. You can't. It doesn't make any sense. So actually, we do live in a reality where intellectually there is no other option. You run into dead ends every other way except for La ilaha illallah. We do live in that reality. The problem is the heart. The problem is not that Allah didn't give us enough signs. The problem is not that Allah didn't surround us enough with miracles, or that the Quran, A'udhu Billah, is not enough, or that the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is not enough. The problem is your heart. That's the problem. That's what we're dealing with. It's a major theme of the Quran that I would just want to call out. What time is it right now? 8:16. Okay, let me give you one break up until 8:19 in 10 seconds. So 8:19. At 8:19, I'm going to start talking again, inshallah. Okay, so go ahead, take your break. There's cookies and stuff in the back. And man, would you mind sharing some of the Ferrero on the other side as well? Yeah. And you guys go. First of all, oh, thank you, Muhammad. I appreciate it. First of all, who is the person in this story that we're talking about? Because this person went through a couple of phases, and landing at this phrase, or landing at this conclusion, I heard the call of a caller, calling to faith, so I believed. Yes? So there's a couple opinions. Who are these people? You can argue that first and foremost, this is actually the same process that our own Prophet ﷺ went through. Because we know that he had 40 years of being Sadiq al-Amin, of being Abu al-Albab, thinking about things outside of himself, people outside of himself. People trusted him with stuff. He cared for other people. He was very, very against the norm. Like for example, his first wife was someone slightly older than him, and was someone that even took care of him financially, which was even abnormal for his time, let alone our own time, but especially in his time. But he didn't think the way everyone else did, and everyone saw him as the most dignified person among them. Yes? And he was someone that had himself a caller call to him. Who was the caller that called to him? Jibreel alayhi salam. فَأَمَنَّا, so I believed. He himself had to go through this process, actually, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he had to go through like, what is the purpose? There has to be more than this. He didn't know himself. Even Allah actually calls him out in the Quran. There's no way you would have known this on your own. He would not have been able to figure out 5 daily prayers, or who Yusuf alayhi salam was, or any of it. Even he was not capable of guiding himself. Even the best man who ever lived among us, also the best human being ever lived, is not capable on his own. Allah needed to fulfill the other side with revelation, you understand? So he is actually first and foremost one person we can think of when we're listening to this. That, they're going through talking to Allah, I heard the call of the caller, I believe, protect me from the fire, is actually him. Second to him, you can say the Sahaba, his companions. They literally heard the call of a caller, and they believed. They went through the same process. Every person in Sirah that you learn about goes through the process of, even the ones that actually, converted to Islam at least, goes through sometimes even fighting against Islam and then being convinced later on in their life. And you can say thirdly is anyone else that has a journey coming to faith. You yourself, your neighbor, whatever. But I want to call that out, that third group, is that you should be a part of that third group. You should not count yourself out, oh, this is like for non-Muslims coming into the faith. No. You yourself need to go through this process of thinking about the world around you, of remembering Allah, and coming to your own conclusion. I've been saying this for literally like a decade, since FNL days, but it bears repeating forever. I'll say it till I die, inshallah, that you need to be able to answer the question, why am I a Muslim? You need to be able to answer that question. Otherwise, really, what are you doing? I mean, may Allah accept people who don't think about it and just adhere to it anyway. Allah, there's a place for them in Jannah, inshallah. But we live in a time where everything threatens us. Everything threatens your faith. The way you feel threatens your faith in our country, in the time and place that we live. You need to have a rock solid foundation within you, and this is where that foundation comes from. Is that clear? And I will extend that. If you have kids already, if you don't, plan it. When you eventually have kids, some of you are very young, plan it. Make the intention from today. I will raise people that are of sound mind, balanced of mind and heart, know why they are Muslim by age 5, even by age 10, whatever. That they know. And may Allah make us parents like that, say Ameen. But this is something that we have to keep in mind. Because we're not exempt from this process. You can be a mindless Muslim. You can be just like Bani Israel. That they believe up here, but they're just like fools. Wallahi, we become fools like they are. Like, for example, when Allah complains about the Jews that all they did with the Torah is all they do is recite it all day. They don't even know what they're saying. Does that sound familiar to you? What does that sound like to you? How can you not think of... Look, I'm not... Like, tajweed is an important study. Please, don't get me... Tilawah is important. Please do not get me wrong. But that's literally all we talk about with Quran, guys. Like, even in our own masjid. If you... I don't know how it is nowadays, but like when I was younger especially, if you were to make a list of all the Quran classes, 9 out of 10 are tajweed, how to recite. What about what it says? Why don't we ever talk about that? I remember when I first, like it's no secret that I'm very a huge fan of like Bayina, Ustaz, no man. I used to be ashamed of it, but I'm not. And the reason, I remember like the first time I found one of his lectures, I started crying. I swear to you, it was Amma Yatasa'aloon. That was the first one I did, one of the first ones I did. And he talked about it for a minute, and I paused and I started bawling. I'm like, I've never heard it talked about like this. And then I got mad. Well, I remember feeling so angry. How come no one told me that it was like this? How come no one taught me this? I've been going to masjid for years, 6 years, 7 years. Sunday school since I was 10. No one ever told me Quran was like this. It made me so angry. I had perfect tajweed, had no idea what the heck I was saying. I got so angry. I was like 17, 18 at the time. So I made it a point for myself that I don't want anyone else, if they want to help it, that no one else has to go through that like I did. We should know what it says. Anyway, I want to give you a quick story of someone that gets called to faith. And this kind of goes into the discussion of like, that every human being has a chance at this. Because one question we have often is like, what about on Judgment Day? What happens to people that maybe do not accept the message or what have you? Everyone has a chance at this. And Allah is the best judge. The real short answer about people who do not accept the religion and die on it, the real answer, as far as I'm aware, as of right now, is Allahu Alam. There definitely is a spectrum, though. There are people, for example, that really are ulul albab, and then guess what turned them off to Islam? Is me and you, Muslims. They're like, they read the religion like this is so beautiful, and then they go to the masjid, and they're like, oh, nope, never mind. I thought this was it. This can't be it. And they leave. How many stories do you know? I know. I can tell you dozens. I know one from Muhammad Suleiman. I'll share with you. It's a happy ending, but still a really sad middle. So it's a young woman from Alabama, a white girl from Alabama, daughter of the pastor, daughter of the priest, on this small town in Alabama, yeah? And she had a dream. You can look this up on YouTube. It's like, you can just search like Kaaba dream, Omar Suleiman. You'll probably find the video on YouTube. But anyway, this girl had a dream, and there was a black box, and people were praying around it. She's like, what was that? And she kept having the dream. So she started Googling black box praying, and she found the Kaaba. And it's like, oh, that's what I saw. Started learning about Islam. Now she's in Alabama. So the closest masjid was literally 100 miles away, like 100 miles away. She got in a car, and she went to that masjid. This is, by the way, ulul albab, they search. This is a story of searchers. You understand? May Allah make us all searchers. But this is an example of a searcher. She went to the masjid. And this is one of those masjids where women have zero place. Which is something that we do not do right in our masjids. But this one was like extreme. Because she walked in the masjid, and all the men that were in a halaqah were like, whoa, 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 whoa. What are you doing in here? Go outside. Someone will talk to you. You're not allowed in here. And she did not wait. She drove home the 100 miles. The whole interaction was probably, a minute or two. Drove home the 100 miles, tears running down her face, and was like, I thought this was from God, it's probably from the devil. Her words. And went home. A week or two later, she kept having the same Kaaba dream. Like, it was like bugging her. She, like, literally, just like, by the way, sitting on their sides, they can't stop thinking about God, right? She's on her side, she can't stop having this dream. By the way, I'll pause here for a second. Her munadi was literally Allah, directly. Isn't that amazing? Can I call that out? Human beings that, well, they all have a chance one way or another. This girl, in the middle of nowhere, Allah brought out a dream to this daughter of a pastor in Alabama. It's just amazing. So many stories like this. I wish I had more time to tell you more, but where do we go next? So she kept having the dream, and she was like, I have to go back. But she didn't go back to that same masjid. She happened to go to Umar Suleiman's masjid at the time. But this time she called ahead. But I'm saying, wise guy, mashallah, he's like, don't come here. We'll meet at this address. They met up at like a school or a coffee shop or something. So they whatever. And they met up, and she accepted Islam on the spot by the end of that conversation. Because it's that whole, this is what I've been looking for moment. Like really, you'll hear this in many convert stories. This is what I'm looking for. You know what I mean? So she accepted Islam on the spot. But really, one moral of the story that I will point out for me and you is that this person hears the call of a caller. So the first thing when you think about this process, you hear the ideas first. And then you step closer to the person. If the person is down here, but the ideas are up here, what will a normal person do? Walk away or continue listening? The character of the caller is down here, but the message is up here. They're not matching. What will a person do? They won't want to listen to you. You do the same messed up stuff I do. You're no different than I am, man. Why should I listen to you? Normal human response, by the way. Obviously, we're supposed to judge the ideas before the person, obviously. But to be fair to the human experience, if you're messed up telling other people to believe in God, dude, maybe you should fix yourself first. Remember, by the way, what passage did we study together where Allah combined you calling to your own actions? Who can remind me what that passage was? Anything about that passage? Well, that's one of them, but actually there was one who really actually specifically called it out. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا. Who remembers this? Yes. مِنْ مَنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ thank you, yes. وَقَالَ إِنِّي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Allah says, who could be better in speech than the one who calls to Allah and does good themselves? وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا. Remember we talked about this. That kind of person, may Allah make us that kind of person, becomes a beacon of light for people like this. Islam is like extremely attractive, guys, to human beings just by nature. This is how Allah put in all of us. But when you and I, people don't even know we're Muslim, how could they be attracted to it? Or when you and I are just terrible people, they'll actually be averted to it. Yeah, my mom told me about you people. Really. And they have actually, yeah, they're kind of right, actually, sometimes, yeah? So I just want to call that out, that we need to watch out for that, being callers ourselves, inshallah. Okay. Back to the tawaffana ma'al abrar comment. Well, actually, I'll continue from here. رَبَّنَا وَآتِنَا مَا وَعَدْتَنَا عَلَى رُسُلِكَ. It continues after that. After saying, take us among the good people. Our Master, and give us what you promised on all of your messengers. وَلَا تُخْزِنَا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. And do not humiliate us on the day of standing. إِنَّكَ لَا تُخْلِفُ. So now they know what to call that day. The day of Qiyamah, the day of standing. إِنَّكَ لَا تُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادِ. No doubt about it, you do not take back your promises. You do not take back your promises. One thing, especially tied back to tawaffana ma'al abrar, there's hope there. This person learned, finally knows Allah. Finally, after searching for so long, finally knows Allah themselves, and now all they can think of is, I just want to meet Him. And the lesson that I'll give to me and you, because sometimes we feel very hopeless when it comes to Allah, which is like, if people feel hopeless when it comes to Allah, they don't understand Allah. First, I'll call that out first and foremost. And that might be a little bit disconnected from the message of the Quran, I would actually say. But we as believers should feel so much like excitement. Like when I go, I get to meet God. Like I get to meet my Rahman. I get to meet Him. I get to be with Him. I don't have to be here anymore. I get to be with Him. Obviously, there's supposed to be a fear. Obviously, that's again where people have bounds. There's supposed to be a fear. Because we do, we are people that say, رَبَّنَا فَغْفِرْ لَنَا ذُنُوبَنَا. Forgive for us our sins. كَفِّرْ عَنَّا سَيِّئَاتِنَا. These disgusting things that I've done, these corpses that I have, there's literally skeletons in my closet. Bury them away from me. We're supposed to be like that too. But overall, it's supposed to be such a hope. Supposed to, your goosebumps are supposed to, your skin stands, your hair stands on your arm when you think about finally being connected to Him directly. You understand? These people get that immediately. just make us other good people so we can be with you again. Tawaffana ma'al abrar. Something I want to call out just in terms of the hope that our faith teaches. And just for the sake of time, there's something else I wanted to share, but we'll end it with the last ayah. It's a long one, so we'll try to finish it inshallah in 12 minutes. فَاسْتَجَابَ لَهُمْ. So that was the entire process. I recommend you read that over again to read how they were singing. It's Ali Imran 3, 190 to 195, yes? 191 to 194 is that person talking. Yes? There's no way you created this without purpose. Protect me, don't put me in the fire. I heard the call of a caller. Give me the, when I die, mark me as the good people. All that conversation happened, and now Allah takes the stage again, being the one talking directly. فَاسْتَجَابَ لَهُمْ رَبُّهُمْ. Beautiful. So their master responded to them. That by itself, subhanAllah. Like this person who's going through this journey talks to Allah. Oh, sorry, one thing, man, I know we don't have time, but man, I don't care. I gotta share this one thing, wallah. I gotta share it. You know, one thing this whole passage highlights actually is I don't want to call it magic, but the miracle behind talking to Allah directly. I want to share with you what I mean by this. I had in two separate occasions, literally two separate occasions. I'll give you the first occasion. I don't want to give you his name. He was not Muslim at the time. Here every day, annoying, mashallah. He would not leave me alone. Not leave us alone. Here every day, calling, where are you guys at? Here for every salah, there for every Jummah. Not a Muslim yet. Months go by, and he won't accept it. So then if you guys, talk to non-Muslims or you have like friends that are interested, eventually you come up on that awkward conversation of like, yo, what's holding you back? I don't know if you've had this conversation before, but really it just kind of comes out like, dude, it's been months. Like what else is missing for you? And I asked him one night, and he's like, I don't know, man. It's just like, I just can't make that jump yet. And you know what I remembered? Wallahi, is inspired entirely by this, because I studied it just recently at the time. This was like, not a decade ago, but like 7, 8 years ago. I remembered this exact thing, where the person's going through the process, but he's talking to Allah, right? So I'm testing it, and I'm like, have you tried talking to God yet? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, have you talked to him directly yet? Like, have you asked him? I don't know who you are, but can you just help me out? I need guidance. He's like, no. I'm like, worth a shot. He's there. He listens. Converted the next day. Sometimes this, like talking to him, is the missing piece. This happened literally 2 different occasions. Someone's like on the edge, and it was just like, why don't you talk to him? Literally within 24 hours, subhanAllah. But I call that out again, first and foremost, not for you guys to tell other people, but for who? For yourselves. If you're someone that like, there's something you're struggling with, have you talked to him? Have you talked to him? Have you asked him? Have you asked for that guidance? If not, then what are you doing? Allah, we sometimes misinterpret what dua is. Dua, first and foremost, is you having a connection with him. It's not for you to just talab, that you just ask for stuff. Like, I want this, like he's a stuff for Allah, like it's you're asking from a waiter, for example. The first and foremost thing is to admit your weakness to him, and actually you don't even have the expectation that he's going to change the physical world around you. No. The expectation is that, it's the idea that he doesn't even take away from the weight but makes your shoulders stronger. That's the idea of dua, you understand? To put it in short. But ironically, if you make dua to Allah, not for extra stuff, not to change the reality around you, but just for him to help you, you will find he will literally actually change the world around you. Literally. The best example of this, people of the cave in Surah 18, they did not ask, they ran away from home because they're going to get killed for believing in Allah. They were mushriks at the time. I don't know if they were Christians or not, whatever, but they were not Christians, they were mushriks. They were just like worshipping idols. Threatened to kill them. They snuck, we don't know the number of boys, but they snuck away at night, and they did not ask, Ya Allah, send a meteor on the city. They said, Ya Allah, guide us. We don't know where we're going, we need your help. And Allah literally, they slept in the cave, their dog stayed awake for, we don't know how many hundreds of years they stayed awake. Allah turned them side by side. He got just enough light in the cave. He literally changed the physical world around them, because these are people that they asked for help. I'm going to give them more than just help. When you have a specific attitude with dua, that you let go of the physical means and you're like, Ya Allah, I'll take whatever you have for me. I accept it. But just help me with it. You have that attitude, you will see literal miracles in your life. Okay? Talking to Allah brings that. Now, coming to a close. فَاسْتَجَابَ لَهُمْ رَبُّهُم. Istijaba, there's ijaba and istijaba. And I remind you of the specific nature of the Quran. Yes, that a word is not used by mistake. We studied this, subhanAllah, nearly a year ago now. I studied this with you guys. We have lectures online of how specific Quran is. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Did we skip one on before?
No.
We ended with.
رَبَّنَا وَآتِنَا وَمَا وَعَدتَنَا. Yeah, we covered that.
I
We just
don't-
shortly.
The Day of Resurrection stuff, I must have missed it.
Yeah, no, we studied that. We went over it a little bit. I couldn't delve deep in it because we just don't have time. We gotta end it for next week, inshallah. I'll share with you a cool thing afterwards, though. Anyway, فَاسْتَجَابَ لَهُمْ رَبُّهُم. So their master, what was I talking about? Istijaba versus ijaba. Both words mean to answer, to respond to something. Istijaba, though, is immediate. When you call someone, they answer immediately. That's istijaba. So Allah is personally answering them with this quote that we're going to get into. I will call out, though, istijaba is, although the answer is immediate, you may not see the results of it for some time. There are people that are searching, and they're just, they're desperately calling to Allah, and Allah is in fact setting things up for them, but you may not see the results immediately. Do you understand? That's what istijaba is. So فَاسْتَجَابَ لَهُمْ رَبُّهُم. And what is he responding with? أَنِّي, that I, لَا أُضِيعُ عَمَلَ عَامِلٍ مِّنْكُمْ. I do not misplace. I will not cause you to lose عَمَلَ عَامِلٍ مِّنْكُمْ. Any deeds from anyone who does any good deeds. من ذكر أو أنثى, be you male or female. بعضكم من بعض, you're from each other, meaning the male and female. Like the first female came from the first male, and every male after comes from females. That's what بعضكم من بعض, one interpretation of it, yeah? So many things, I wish I had more time, Allah. But Allah is announcing to them, I am not going to lose any good thing that you do. Whatever you have done is recorded. It's not going to be lost with me. And he calls out specifically where he did not need to do this. He rarely calls out men and women, by the way, rarely. But here he calls out, be you male or female, you have my word, I've marked down your deeds. Which one benefit of this is the journey to faith for males and the journey of faith to females can be very different. The deeds of men and the deeds of women that earn Jannah, that change lives, that please Allah, could be very, very different. And Allah says, I see all of it. I see all of it. There are many times, especially in our culture, where we will belittle the deeds on this side, and this side belittles the deeds of this side. Very often this happens. I've even heard, this is almost embarrassed to share the example, but I've heard even a woman in the masjid belittle stay-at-home moms, for example. That's not a job. There's one time I heard. Terrible thing to say. What are you talking about? من ذكر أو أنثى. I do not lose the deeds of anyone, male or female, whatever it is that they do. Whatever it is that they do. That is a huge, huge deed. Actually, I've convinced now of the argument that women have it easier in Islam than men, actually. So for example, you give birth, all your sins are forgiven. Yeah? Even, for example, obviously, like with the time of the month, salah does not have to happen, but you actually, by not praying, are in constant state of worship. You know that? By not praying, you're in constant state of worship because that's a commandment of Allah to not pray. So you have that added benefit of like, I do nothing and I'm praying. There's just this extra actually like ease that Allah gives to the women that we don't necessarily have, and everyone has their due proportion in life. But when it comes to the relationship with Allah, to our deeds, spiritually, Islam believes men and women are exactly equal, spiritually speaking. When it comes to the bodies, to psychology, there are differences. It's not equal, it's equitable, but we don't believe in actual equality where it's 50-50. It actually doesn't make any sense in the real world. But when it comes to spirituality, it is exactly the same. Min dhakarin aw untha, it doesn't matter. Does that make sense what's being said here? Okay. Ba'dukum al-bad فَالَّذِينَ هَاجَرُوا. So for the people that migrated, وَأُخْرِجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِهِمْ, and they were kicked out of their homes. We're getting the hint here that sometimes believing in this faith comes with actual physical consequences by those who do not mean well for us, yes? We're seeing, I don't have to name who we're seeing as getting the consequence of being Muslim, and other lands. You pick your favorite. It's not just Gaza, it's Sudan, it's pick your favorite. There's many examples you can see. People that do not waver and are forced to migrate. وَأُخْرِجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِهِمْ, and are kicked from their homes. وَأُوذُوا فِي سَبِيلِي, and even worst case scenario, they're tortured in my path. وَأُوذُوا فِي سَبِيلِي, They're tortured on the way to me, even you can say. Yeah, وَقَاتَلُوا, and they had to fight and defend themselves. وَقُتِلُوا, and they were killed. لَأُكَفِّرَنَّ عَنْهُمْ سَيِّئَاتِهِمْ. I will absolutely, أُكَفِّرَنَّ, you cannot get more hyperbolized in the Arabic language than لَأُكَفِّرَنَّ. I will absolutely bury away their sins. And by the way, before the noob were mentioned, the little sins, now let's forget those. Everything is buried. لَأُكَفِّرَنَّ عَنْهُمْ سَيِّئَاتِهِمْ. وَلَأُدْخِلَنَّهُمْ, and I will absolutely enter them in multiple gardens, jannat. By the way, physically impossible. When you enter a garden, you're entering one garden. We don't even understand what is it like to enter multiple at the same time. What does that even mean? We have no idea. The point is they will have more than they can even imagine they'd ever want. وَلَأُدْخِلَنَّهُمْ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ, that underneath them rivers flow. You don't have to irrigate, you don't have to work, it's just there. Another actual thing about this is that your home has literal rivers underneath it, and then scholars say there's glass, so it's like there's like an aquarium underneath your feet. تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ. I'll call out again. I can't call out, I'll ثَوَابًا مِنْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ, a reward especially from Allah, from nearby from Allah. وَاللَّهُ عِنْدَهُ حُسْنَ ثَوَابٍ, and Allah has the absolute best reward. I will call out one thing here. Hajaru, they migrated. We know in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, there was literally a hijrah, an actual migration. And there are people that actually do need to flee from their lands. And we see that all over the world, even up to 2024, we see that all over the place. But you yourself can be a muhajir. You yourself can be a hajir, a muhajir. It could be a physical thing, and that's a very noble deed that you have to leave your home for the sake of Allah. Very, very noble. That's a huge thing. But you yourself can go from darkness to light yourself. You can go from sin to going back to Allah, from wasting your time to spending it wisely, from being a terrible father to trying with your kids, from not praying to praying. That's hijrah. You're traveling for His sake. You can be of that group where Allah gives you certainty. It's as if you're a baby when you see me. And you will have gardens, and you will بِغَيْرِ حِسَاب. You will have no reckoning. It'll be, just go ahead. You don't have judgment day. That's for everyone else. You go. May Allah make us of those people. Next week, we were supposed to do a week 4 of this, but I kind of got excited. We're going to do the opposite conversation. This was a conversation of the journey to faith. Next week, inshallah, is actually the journey to kufr. Very serious conversation, especially for Muslims. A life-changing passage. I will actually warn you that it will be something that will stick in your head forever, inshallah. That's next week. And then after that, I take a break for the rest of September. May Allah let's end with Surah Al-Asr really quick. Wal-Asr, together. Wal-Asr, inna al-insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat, wa tawasaw bil-haqq, wa tawasaw bil-sabr. Allahumma ja'alna minhum, may Allah make us among them. We'll see you guys next week, inshallah. I'm not going to challenge you to memorize this next one. We'll just talk about it next week.